الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا الغرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من الثامنة وحتى التاسعة صباحا في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا. Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues.
And good morning, everybody. It's March 10, 2023, and I'm Ray Hanania, guest hosting this Friday on Radio Bellady, WNZK AM 690 Radio in Greater Detroit. We are going to be talking about the tragedy in Syria, the extreme Israeli violence in Palestine, upcoming Ramadan and Easter. They're going to be both here soon in a few weeks. And what do we do? Big question. What do you do when two teenagers are stopped in a traffic stop by police and one of the teenagers refuses to cooperate and appears to have a gun in a bag and then runs and the police chase? Are the police justified to try and get that gun away from him? What should they do? Just let him run off, and who knows what he's going to do with that gun, right? So we're going to be talking about all that. We're also going to be taking calls at 248-557-3300. We're going to have one of my favorite guests, a longtime journalist and reporter, Ali Younes. It's a great writer, does some great stuff, and I think he's on with us. Ali, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Ali, welcome aboard. Again, we're broadcasting live on WNZK AM 690 Radio and streaming live also on the U.S. Arab Radio Network at facebook.com/US Arab Radio. So you can kind of watch us, or at least watch me this time, because I know Ali is on the phone and he's been gracious enough to join us. And make sure to check out my columns at hanania.com. And also follow me on TikTok before the U.S. government suppresses that social media. It's the one place where Palestine has a lot of pro-Palestinian videos. And I think that's what's really upsetting the politicians in Washington. Ali, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you, Ray, and good morning.
Hey, good morning. So let's first talk about the violence in Palestine by the Israeli government. You know what? No matter how violent the Israelis get, they're always treated the same in the United States. They could push somebody over, or they could massacre 20 people, and the news media treats them the same. They're just responding to terrorism. What's happening?
Well, Israel always say that they are conducting an operation in the
operation. That sounds like what the Russians are doing in Ukraine. It's a special operation.
It's a special operation. Yes, it's one of the military euphemism for
murdering people.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens with Israel, because the Israeli army is not known as taking it lightly when it comes to the Palestinian. They're always trigger happy, and they could kill Palestinian at will. And even though Israel says it has the most moral army, but when it comes to the Palestinians, this moral army kills more Palestinians wholesale. In the 5, in the 10s, in the 20 people, and Israel claims that these are gunmen. But the story is much more complicated than this. That Israel is going to the Nablus or Jenin and kill 10 people or 5 people. A lot of times, a lot of bystanders get killed too, just like in Gaza. Innocent civilians who carry no guns, attacking no Israelis, and they get killed in the process. And Israel gets away with it because it justifies under the name of security. But the bigger story is that Israel can go to Palestinian areas they're not supposed to go to anyway. Under the Oslo Agreement of 1993 and 94, this Area A, which is the major cities in the West Bank, Ramallah, Jenin, Hebron, and Nablus, only the Palestinian Authority can go there. And
they were supposed to stay out. You're absolutely right. Yeah, but you know what? Americans are like feeble-minded, I think, because they don't, they're the smartest people in the world, but the least intelligent about the world. And they're just happy to get whatever narrative they can get. If you tell them something they like, they go, oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, those terrorists, those in refugee camps wearing tattered clothing, living under tin roofs. They must be a real threat to the Israelis who have Uzis and AK-47s and missiles and planes and tanks. I don't know. It's frustrating because what do we do about it? The rhetoric even from the Israelis, the Smotrich, who's the head of, he's has an influence over the settlements, and he's with the religious Zionist party, and he's the finance minister of this new government. And he basically says, El Hawara, they should destroy it. And then only when the U.S. says, hey, you can't come into the U.S., they're talking about banning them, which they're not going to do. He kind of says, well, I was just talking about it in a generic way.
And he apologized to the Israeli army, not to the Palestinians. Or to
yes,
America.
He was saying, I didn't mean to make you guys look bad.
Yeah.
Go ahead, keep killing.
That tells you the condescending attitude of Israel.
Yeah.
And how it treats the Palestinians. What complicates the story, the issue is the weakness of the Palestinian Authority. And this question is like, which one is first, the egg or the chicken?
Yeah.
Because the Palestinian Authority has jurisdiction over these cities, but it's weak.
Right.
And Palestinians look at it as weak and as a subcontractor. But the other, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but with respect to that, they live under occupation. It's it's hard to have a government when you have a military soldier with a rifle hitting you over the head, and you're supposed to govern an area. Even in spite of that, they choke the Palestinians off. They can't get around. The oppression of the Israelis. It's an apartheid government. They can't really be a government. So they can only walk a very narrow sidewalk, right? Mahmoud Abbas, he really should step down. They should appoint somebody. They should have an election. But even the elections, are under the control and oppression of the Israelis. How do you have any semblance of a government or leadership in that situation?
It is very hard because even though Palestinians are weak, the government, but also it is weakened by the Israelis themselves because Palestinians see that this Palestinian Authority, which has tens of thousands of armed police and national security, national guards, to protect the installations and to protect the authority itself, they are standing down when it comes to Israel. That's the rules. That's the Oslo Agreement. So the Palestinians are keeping their side of the bargain and of the agreements with Israel. But Israel is just weakening them because it just intrudes and conducts raids and kill at will. And that renders the Palestinians in a very bad situation. I'm talking about the government in a very bad situation. And they look very bad in the mind.
Yeah, they do.
The Palestinians.
But could any government look good? Look at Hamas. Honestly, the only reason Hamas has a better structure is because the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, surrounded it, though. They came up with a new plan, of imprisonment with the cooperation of the Egyptians and pretty much all the Arab world. What can they do? What is Hamas doing? They fire back some stuff. They're a little more violence, but they're not very successful. Well, you know what I mean? It's not like there's a real intifada that we saw in 1989 where the impact was huge.
I was in Gaza in 2019, reporting on some stories there. And I think, Hamas was willing and is still willing to hand Gaza to the Palestinian Authority because Gaza, it has 2 million people.
Right.
And it finds itself as a government that has to deliver, that has to pick up the trash, has to deliver water, electricity, has to worry about the roads and court system. And Hamas doesn't see itself as a government at this point under the yoke of the Israelis or the Egyptians, for that matter, because it's two-sided blockade, Egyptian and Israeli blockading Gaza.
Right.
And but the Palestinian Authority, they're not interested because they see Hamas as a rival.
Right.
So the more Hamas,
so it's about surviving their politics, their own local politics.
Right. So, but and Hamas, is just managing the situation today. and in the eyes of Palestinians, because it's not subjected to Israeli day-to-day intrusion or raids.
Right.
That's gives a sense of security for the people of Gaza. Mind you, there's a war. It's just an all-out war against the Palestinians in Gaza.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you support Hamas, but it sounds like you're a little less harsh on Hamas than you are on the Palestinian Authority.
Well, Hamas it's not I'm less harsh. I'm trying to analyze the situation. Hamas.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not trying to criticize you, but I'm trying to say because that attitude, I hear that all the time. It's the Palestinian Authority, and I'm thinking, well, is Hamas really doing anything constructive, or are they also playing this power game where they don't want to share a government? They want to control a government, or they won't. So,
I'm privy to the because I was reporting on it.
Yes.
The negotiations between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. And I spoke to people from the Palestinian Authority and people from Hamas. And it's always negotiation and survival over politics.
Right.
And it is always breaks down because there's a fundamental difference.
Right.
The two groups, Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority, see different paths. They see peace with Israel today and now, although it's unattainable. They see we're not going to have struggle, none whatsoever. We're not going to carry guns, none whatsoever against Israel. Hamas says, wait a minute, I better keep my weapons just in case or to defend myself. That's the Hamas's argument. So it's two different, divergent worldview between these two groups, and that prevents them from meeting at some point and says, well, let's work together. And also, when it comes to the Palestinians, it is always the Arab side, always meddling and intervening in politics.
Right.
For example, in a regional perspective, Palestinian Authority is part of the axis of Jordan, Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and US and Israel, for that matter. Because of that's in the larger configuration of the world, that's where the camp is. Hamas, on the other hand, is part of a different axis that sees itself as part of Turkey, Qatar, and Hezbollah in Lebanon, that sees itself as different. So the regional component of the Palestinian issue really plays a big part. Egypt blockades Hamas, but Egypt is a close ally with the Palestinian Authority. So as long as the Arab side and the international side is not okaying the Palestinian agreement and facilitating that agreement, it's very hard that I see Palestinian groups will come together. And it has always been the case, even in the days of the PLO and Yasser Arafat.
So in a way, it's our fault too, isn't it? I mean, if we can't come together, don't the Palestinians, don't the Israelis take advantage of that and do whatever they want? And, while we're flipping and flopping around like fish, they're just picking us off one at a time. Now, there's so many Palestinians, they can't massacre all of us, but they've killed about 100 Palestinians over the last 2.5 months.
Yeah, over 100.
Yeah, and nobody's done anything about it.
Yes, and I was once on a radio station in the Arab world a few months back, and they say why the Palestinians are weak. I said to them, so Palestinians are weak because the Arab world is weak. When the Arab world is strong and has leverage on the world stage, Palestinians get stronger and they carry on that. And this leverage rub off them. But look at the region, Jordan, Egypt, the Gulf.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Syria is out of the question. The heavyweight. Iraq is out of the question, the heavyweight. I'm talking about the traditional Arab world heavyweights, Egypt, Syria, and Iraq. Right. These countries are weak, fragmented, not real countries in terms of their economies and infrastructure and armies. So they're not a factor. So that leaves you the smaller Gulf states with a lot of money and a lot of influence in the region.
Right.
But this footprint, because they cannot provide the footprint that Egypt.
Right. They're not directly connected. The land geographically.
No yes.
There's no borders with them.
And with that, Jordan, for example, and I always write about Jordan because Jordan is the only country in the Arab world that is directly involved with the Palestinians, shares the borders.
They have no choice.
Majority of the Palestinians were and still is Jordanian citizens, because Jordan annexed the West Bank after 1948 war, and West Bank was under Jordan control and sovereignty. And yet Jordan is more or less on the Israeli side, not on the Palestinian side. This is the perception people get.
Well, isn't that because it's almost like the Jordanians, King Abdullah II basically is doing what his father did and grandfather and uncles and all that. They basically figured the Israelis are so tough. The best thing to do is try to work with them to keep things from screwing up our country, Jordan.
That's understandable.
They have no goal. They talk the rhetoric. They have the rhetoric, but
under King Hussein, King Hussein kept secret ties with Israel
all the time. Of course.
Kept Israel off his back and kept the Americans.
In other words, that was the goal, right? Keep Israel off their back.
Yes, and keep Americans happy, because
they're getting money.
Yes, they get money, and with no cost to Jordan as far as sacrificing the Palestinian population, or standing in the Arab world. But Jordan today, for example, goes into strategic integration with Israel. This is public information. And the water issue, integrating with Israel, and the electricity issue, integrating with Israel, meaning Jordan will depend on Israeli water, will depend on Israeli energy. It buys gas to have its electrical grid operating. Whereas Israel is not depending on Jordan. For example, the Israeli electrical grid is connected to Cyprus and Greece, to Europe, just in case a catastrophic event happens in Israel. Europe will supply Israel. Jordan depends on Israel.
Ali, we got to take a quick break here at WNZK AM 690. I'm Ray Hanania. On the line with me is Ali Younes, a veteran reporter and journalist I've known forever. He's a great guy. And I'll be honest, I'll go as far to say that he and I are probably two of only a small handful of professional journalists in the Arab community here in the U.S. There's some good ones in Detroit. There are a couple in Los Angeles and the San Francisco area. But when it comes to professional journalism, that list is very, very small in this country. So we don't have a voice. A lot of people, all they do is they get angry and they post on social media, or they write in publications that Americans never read. I don't consider them journalists. They're just activists. And, they're doing a good job, but it's not very effective. I'm Ray Hanania. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take some phone calls at 248-557-3300 with our guest, Ali Younes, talking about the violence in Palestine and Israel's extremist government. We'll talk a little bit about Syria in a bit, even this issue of anti-Semitism, that criticizing Israel is anti-Semitic. It's amazing. We'll be right back right after these messages.
Are your hands feeling numb? Do you feel pain opening up a jar, turning a key? Are you noticing that your elbow and your shoulder are becoming stiff? Or were you recently injured in your arm? Hello, I'm Dr. Albanjit Katranji, and at the Katranji Hand Center, which just recently opened down the street from the Somerset Mall, we can provide you with the latest in hand, wrist, elbow, and shoulder care. Visit us at www.katranjihandcenter.com to learn the latest techniques that we have to offer you, and I look forward to taking care of you.
Visit us in Troy at 1565 West Big Beaver Road, Building F, or call Katranji Hand Center for an appointment at 248-869-4263. That's 248-869-4263. Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab offers a great array of your favorite Mediterranean meals. Meals range from lamb specialties, shawarma sandwiches, and seafood dinners. Plus, they offer big trays of your favorite food and so much more. Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab is located at 32839 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills and is open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So stop in or call Kashat's today at 248-538-9552. That number again, 248-538-9552. Kashat's Mediterranean Market in Shish Kebab will definitely leave you satisfied.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-3 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
And we're back here at WNZK AM 690 live radio in Greater Detroit. I'm Ray Hanania. On the line with me is my guest and colleague, Ali Younes, great journalist. There's really only a small handful of us in the Arab and Palestinian community in the United States who are professional journalists. There's a group. It's not very big. But a lot of the other people, just because you're a writer doesn't make you a journalist. Just because you can post a few nouns, adjectives, and verbs on social media doesn't mean that you're actually reporting on anything. You're just expressing your anger and your emotion. Our number is 248-557-3300. Let's go to one of our favorite callers, always calls, Jerry Haba. Jerry always listens and always calls. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Ray Hanania, for taking my call. I appreciate your beautiful words toward me. And always, I respect your show. And I appreciate what you do for the community as a journalist for the past century almost. I'm not trying to make you
old.
Old. No, you are young in your knowledge and in your, personality. And I want to say good morning to Mr. Ali Younes. That's another Middle Eastern high mountain beside you. So good morning, Mr. Ali Younes. كيف الحال؟ كيف صحتك Mr. علي يونس؟ كيفك؟
اهلا الله يسلمك.
شكرا استاذ علي يونس.
I love to speak عربي يعني.
Yes ما شاء الله. نحن لغة الضاد تجمعنا بغسان وعدناني من الشام لبغداني. قلت مستر ريحانانية كيفك خيي ريحانانية كيفك؟
I'm doing good. I am doing good. The part of the key to journalism in the Arab community in the U.S. is the ability to communicate in English to the American people, because you think in Arabic, it's different than when you think in English. It really is a different process. And we don't connect, and I'm not criticizing the Arabic, but this raises a good point about the ineffectiveness of the Arab community. We've never when we assimilate, a lot of us just disappear. We don't assimilate in a way where you can see us, so we have the ones that won't assimilate, and those activists, not like you, Jerry. I think you're a great American.
Thank you, Mr.
Keep both your culture and everything, but you're unique in a sense.
And Mr. Rayhanani, we always, as an American, to be proud from Middle Eastern background, we try to build bridges between our great country, the United States of America, and to the Middle East country. We like those bridges to be open, all the channels to be open, communication to be there, because without communication, we lost the truth and the fact about what's going on over there, especially as a journalist. You, Mr. Rayhanani, and Mr. Ali Younes, you are the mirror that reflect the true news and about what's going on over there. But I don't want to take too much of your time. Mr. Ali Younes, Mr. Rayhanani, when we mention about Jordan, Jordan, I know, has a good relationship with Israel a long time ago.
Yeah.
But, the one thing we would never forget, Mr. Ali Younes, Mr. Ray, Jordan has a big advantage over Israel, especially when you mention a lot of Palestinians who they live in the West Bank, they are Jordanian citizens. Imagine, Mr. Ali Younes, Mr. Rayhanani, if Jordan opened the border and let those Palestinian Jordanians go to Palestine, to Israel, what's going to happen to the state of Israel? They're going to collapse, because what is it? 2, 3, 4 million Palestinians we got living in the region.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, Jerry, thank you. First of all, thank you, Jerry, for the call. All right. And listen to that
wait,
answer. We appreciate it.
Just
Let me
one
take-
second, please.
Go ahead.
I
Real
try to
quick.
say, yes. Before Palestinians talking about the two-state solution, why they don't unite themselves, one government in the West Bank and one government in Gaza. You know, we have to unite ourselves, the
Yes.
Palestinian, before we start going further and further. I thank you for taking my call.
Thanks, Jerry.
Mr. Rehanania and to Mr. Ali Younes, and I would love to hear your comments about this. Shukran. Thank you. Shalom.
Thank you. Hey, you know, there's two things that don't exist in the Arab language or Arab culture. One is the P sound, P, which is ironic since we call it Palestine, and unity. That word unite and unity, that doesn't exist. It's non-existent. It's always been non-existent.
Well, in
What do you
Arabic,
think,
it's
Ali?
Palestine. Like, you know, you hear
Yeah.
the East Palestine in
Yeah.
Ohio.
Yeah,
And I was-
they pronounce it as Palestine. You know, when the what was it when the shuttle crashed in Texas and Palestine?
Yeah.
Remember that? And they had the Israeli astronaut on board. Everybody was so worried about, if we say Palestine because it was an Israeli astronaut on board that died, somehow that's disrespectful. So they wouldn't say Palestine. They'd say every city around Palestine, but the shuttle crashed. Most of its stuff that broke up fell into that little village, that city of Palestine.
Yeah. To address Jerry's legitimate question, I think this is a great question as to Jordan's relation with the Palestinians.
Yeah.
It's not easy because the Palestinians in the West Bank in 1988,
Yep.
Jordan has revoked its ties with the Palestinians in the West Bank and revoked its legal ties with the West Bank itself. In other words, the West Bank was occupied from Jordan, as was part of Jordan. Palestinians in the West Bank were Jordanian citizens, representation in the parliament, and all this trapping of the being part of the country. In 1988, the Jordanians said, you know, I'm no longer want this West Bank thing. I'm revoking. They call it disengagement in English, but it's not disengagement. It's revoking.
Right.
It's relation and claim to the West Bank after they annexed it between 1948 and 1967 when it was occupied by Israel. So Jordanians and the Palestinians in the West Bank, they have Jordanian passport, but as a travel documents. They're no longer citizens of Jordan. But the Palestinians in Jordan, they are citizens of the country because they've been there in the fourth generation, and there are millions of them in Jordan. And I write about this issue quite more frequently. But Jordanians cannot and will not open the borders with the West Bank or with the West Bank and let the Palestinians go back home, you know, as Jerry maybe suggested.
Right.
Because first of all, Israel controls all the border in the Jordan Valley. It has an army. And Jordan will not do that because it will create, I mean, it has a peace treaty with Israel. And even at wartime, they cannot do that. Jordan doesn't have the capacity militarily or economy to survive an Israeli attack, an army attack, or an economic ramifications of if it decides to take that route. And historically, Jordan is not that kind of country. It's a pro-West. It's always conservative. It's stable. It always defers to the U.S. and to the West on issues related to Israel. And King Abdullah, for example, what I follow his speeches, he never said the word occupation in English. He always talks about food security between Israel and the Palestinians.
Right.
He talks about people needs to sit together, two-state solutions. He talks about all these general terms. His foreign ministry, for example, issues a statement that says Israeli occupation this, Israeli occupation that. So only in Arabic. So, and that's Jordanians' line is trying to be on the good side of Israel and the good side of America and the powerful American lobby groups. Because when King Abdullah and Queen Rania comes to the U.S., When they come to the US, they meet with Congress, they meet with the pro-Israeli groups, and they meet with evangelical Christian groups. They keep everybody's happy.
Yep.
But I noticed that many Jordanians at home, they're not very happy because of economic situation and because of political stand. It's very rough politically and economically at home. But the king and the queen, they're very popular in Washington. I can tell you.
Of course. Listen, Jordan has what's called a good image here in the West. But in all honesty, Jordan screwed up everything. The governments in Jordan, going all the way back to King Abdullah, to King Hussein, King Abdullah the First, all of them. They're just pathetic in terms of strategy. They lacked it. They weren't very smart. Their goals were more selfish. They really didn't want to lose that land. They wanted to control it. And
understandable. I understand they want to survive, and that's legitimate.
Yeah, no. Well, is this surviving? Are they surviving? Is Jordan surviving? The economy sucks. They can't do anything there. King Abdullah, he's a good guy. He's Western, he's smart, he looks like he's a short Italian from New York. I'd probably be considered an Italian instead of a Jordanian if he came to this country and nobody knew if he wasn't introduced.
Look, the king is half British. He's more on the white side. Yeah,
no, I know. But it's what's disturbing to me is this. I always say that instead of getting bread, we get breadcrumbs. That's what it is. These are breadcrumbs, and we look at the breadcrumbs and we say, "Oh, listen, that's the best we can do. Let's call it bread." But Jordan, like all the other countries, Egypt, another one, just totally, what a disaster.
Yeah, it's a case in point of what a disaster is. It's like a sinking Titanic right there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm on the line with Ali Younes, a professional journalist and writer. I've known him, he's a colleague of mine. I've known him for a long time. And like I keep saying, there aren't many real professional journalists. Ramzi Baroud is a great writer and journalist. He's traveling in Australia. We were going to try to get him on the radio show today, but unfortunately he couldn't make it because of the time change and all that. So we wish him safe travels in Australia. And when he gets back, maybe we'll bring him on. And Ali, I'll bring you on too, because I know he's a friend of both of ours. He attended our first journalism conferences that we did back in the 90s. But, this community in this country, the Arab community, dysfunctional, disaster, ineffective, rivals, jealousy, envious. I'll give you a good example here in Illinois. Cyril Nichols, a state representative, introduced a bill to recognize Arabs for minority business enterprise, so they get a special status to claim bills. But because it wasn't introduced by the Arab community, they introduced another bill through Abdel Nasser Rashid, the newly elected state rep, who's a good guy. I'm not knocking him, but as a consequence of what he's done, that other bill now, they're both frozen. They're not going anyplace because the black vote, which really is critical to this passage, is now wondering what the heck is going on. Cyril Nichols wanted to represent Arabs, and this bill that was pushed by a bunch of idiots, actually, that I don't know why Abdel Nasser went along with it. They want to push this phrase "mina," on every aspect. They're more interested in the perception than the reality of what it doesn't mean. It's mina means nothing, and it dilutes the Arab power and means that we might as well just disappear. But we can talk about more of that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue discussing some of the politics, the Middle East, Palestine, maybe a little bit about Syria also. And if we can, violence involving Arab teenagers with guns. What do we do about that? Do we defend the Arab teenager that gets roughed up by the police, and pretend that he wasn't a threat driving around with a gun in the back seat of a car where there was only the driver in the front seat? I'm Ray Hanania, and we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back right after these messages.
Life is a nonprofit charity that's provided humanitarian aid and development to people and communities for over 25 years, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Please help improve these efforts. Make your tax-deductible donation to Life now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Najee Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Najee Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Najee Abood, 734-744-9796.
When it comes to reproductive medicine, IVF Michigan Fertility Centers are the recognized leaders. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 5 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. As a founding member of IVF Michigan Fertility Centers, Dr. Nicholas Shama is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. Dr. Shama has performed over 10,000 IVF cases and has helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. American board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility, Dr. Nicholas Shama is a very caring, compassionate, expert physician that understands not only the medical but also the emotional toil of infertility on his patients. When it's time, get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio. Call toll-free 855-952-9600, 855-952-9600.
And welcome back. I'm Ray Hanania with my guest, Ali Younes. And he's a professional journalist like me. I'm a columnist. I do some reporting only on Middle East issues, not really reporting on domestic American issues anymore. I used to, but I don't do it anymore. I just write opinion columns out here in Chicagoland. What about, hey, let's talk, Ali. You're able to hang on with us through the end of the show, you think? Oh, good,
sure,
good.
yes.
That's great. I know you were traveling, so I appreciate you joining us. And like I said, maybe the next time we can get Ramzi Baroud on, who's a great writer, and we'll get his opinions on all this. Let me just ask you, let's go to the end of the line here. This, in Chicago, in Oak Lawn, the suburb of Chicago, there were 2 teenagers back in July. They were driving around and police spotted them and pulled them over. One was in the front seat alone and the other one was in the back seat. Okay. To me, that's suspicious right on its face. I don't care whether you're Arab, black, Hispanic, white, or whatever, but there's something wrong, something going on there. They pull them over. They smell marijuana. They ask them to get out. The first kid that gets out, the Arab kid, very nice, treated very well by the police. The police basically say, hey, listen, we're going to just check you to see what's going on here. Do you have any weapons or anything? That kid says no. And they don't do anything to him. There's no brutality. There's no disrespect. There's no you Arab kid stuff. They treat him really nice. He cooperates. He does everything he's told. He stands to the side. And then they look in the car, and in the back seat is this other Arab kid. And he has this bag, which has a heavy object in it, which looks like a gun. Now, you're a police officer. You're going to think that it's a loaf of bread? No, you're going to always assume that there's a weapon there. So you tell the kid, leave that bag on the back seat and please come out. They're very polite. He gets out, grabs the bag as he's getting out, stands up, and before the officer can do anything, he runs. The police give chase, believing he has a gun. They finally catch up to him, and he takes this bag with what they believe is a gun and puts it under his stomach as he's laying on his stomach on the ground, tightly holding it with both hands under his stomach. So the police trying to get him to relent and let go, and he won't do it. So they start punching his arms. They punch him in the head. They're trying to get him to let go and do what he's supposed to do. And of course, he gets hurt. I think that's on him. And it turns out there's a weapon in there with bullets. What are they doing? Driving around with a gun. He's 17 years old. And that same month, July 2022, the next day, a 18-year-old is driving around with Hispanic, driving around with two other Hispanic gang members. And they're teaching one of them, who's 15, how to fire a weapon at houses. They see somebody, they shoot the guy twice in the leg. They run off. The police chase them down. They abandon the car. They catch all three of them. They bring them to court, and everybody says, "Oh, it's police brutality. The police are beating up on the kid." This one suspect, Montana, he's just a teenager. Leave him alone. So the Cook County State's attorney says, "Let's drop the felony charges. Let's just give him 24 days of community service." And then 6 months later, he goes on and shoots a Chicago police officer, Vasquez Lasso, and kills him in a gunfight after a domestic squabble. That should have been prevented. And that's on the Cook County State's attorney. What is it about our community, Ali, that we always assume because you're Arab, you must be a great politician? Because you're Arab, you must be innocent. Because you're Arab, we should put you above issues and principles and what's good for the community. What is that? Is it because we're victims and we feel that, everybody's against us and we have to do that? What do you think?
Well, there's several things at this story that comes to mind. First of all, the Arab community in Chicago and maybe across the U.S. is changing culturally. And it's although it is largely an immigrant population with immigrant values and value system and culture that they bring from overseas, which is, tend to be conservative, and people stay off drugs because the drugs in the past.
They say that.
Yeah, it was not a thing in the past.
Right. But listen, a lot of Arab teens are on drugs. Believe me, they get arrested all the time.
Right. That's why I'm saying it's changing. It's no longer that past because the second and third generations are more Americans, they're more involved, and I see maybe less prone to go to college, and that's quite unfortunate. But also I see drugs, spreading rampantly in the Middle East too. Egypt, Jordan, Gaza, everywhere is an issue of drugs. So Syria and Lebanon. So that you see it everywhere. So with that in mind, an Arab American kid get arrested carrying a gun. If you from an Arab culture that is conservative, you say, how come you carry a gun? And that means.
Well, you would think they would say that, but they don't. They don't say, why is this kid carrying a gun? Instead, they say, why was he beaten up? Well, because the police suspected he had a gun. And in fact, he did, and it was loaded.
So carrying a gun signifies that you are, in a criminal activity of sort. Drugs.
Of course. You're 17 years old. It's illegal.
Right. But
it is a crime. It is a criminal activity.
This does not justify brutality if it took place.
Well, listen, I think it justified any type of level of violence to get a suspect who you suspect has a gun and has a gun after you get him, to force him to let go.
Right.
Because all he has to do, you don't know if he has the gun in his hand or he pulls it out or shoots somebody. So, but that, I don't think the community understands that. They're upset because, this is racism against the Arabs. But the first kid wasn't discriminated against. Right.
What I was trying to say, having a gun does not justify brutality, but the police is trained to deal with threats.
Well, so that's where I disagree with you, though. I think if somebody, especially any teenager driving around in an area where violence is increasing and rising in the Chicagoland area, and they're suspected of having a gun and they won't cooperate, I think violence is the only way you can restrain them.
Well,
how else do you restrain somebody with a gun?
Right.
You say, sir, hey kid, stop! I'll buy you, a sandwich. Please stop. Please don't run with that gun. I don't want you to kill somebody.
I haven't finished the thought because you would agree with me.
I know, I'm joking. Go ahead.
Yeah, because what I'm saying does not justify using violence if the threat is being restrained and under control.
Yes, so like that one guy, what was his name? Tripp, who was beaten up by those police officers. What did he do? He didn't have a gun.
The police, police has, deals with threat. So if I am putting my hand behind my back and the police doesn't see my hand, the police is going to assume that I have a.
They have to. You're right.
Yeah, that's the nature also of the American society. It's a lot of violence, especially in big cities. So
would you be upset if you're one of your kids as a teenager driving around with a gun and got arrested, even if he didn't get beat up? Would you be upset?
I would beat him up too, to be honest.
I would. I'll be honest. I'd do the same thing. I would beat him up before the police.
Exactly.
Because you know that if you don't teach that kid a lesson, then they may, I'm not saying they will, they may go on to do something worse that gets them in more trouble. And it ruins their lives.
That's exactly right. So 2 issues: the police culture, it deals with a threat and perception of a threat. And the police has the right to neutralize the threat. And what I mean by neutralize is not try to justify violence against this is a country of laws. Once you restrain the threat and neutralize the threat against your person, because you don't want the police to get killed and get shot. And unfortunately, they do.
Right.
You treat the suspect according to the laws, Miranda rights, respect, restrain, and all that stuff. And I'm like you, I don't want to see anybody, especially from the Arab community, justifies, my son is a drug dealer or my son carries a weapon and he got beat up by the police and therefore it's the police. Well, what about the underlying issue?
They won't address it.
Yeah, we should address these issues, really.
Yeah, they won't, though. Listen, Ali, I know we got to take one more break. But after the break, I'm going to let you pick a topic. We could talk about Syria. We could talk about any topic. We could talk about politics, whatever you want. How's that?
Sure.
All right. I'm Ray Hanania. My guest, Ali Younes, a professional journalist and reporter, unlike a lot of the people that spew nouns, verbs, and adjectives in a really kind of wacky order sometimes on social media. He's actually a journalist who reports on facts and news. Actual news, real stories. I write an opinion column about the Middle East and some reporting on the Middle East. But here in the U.S., I write an opinion column. I don't do reporting on mainstream issues anymore. I'm just an op-ed columnist telling you what I think. We're going to take a quick break here at WNZK AM 690 Radio. And when we come back, we can take your calls at 248-557-3300. We'll be right back right after these messages.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain. Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bottom, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights.
And I'm Ray Hanania, and you're listening to WNZK AM 690 radio in Greater Detroit, Radio Ballady. With me is Ali Younes. Ali, you got the floor. Anything you want to talk about instead of me always telling you what you got to talk about?
Let's talk about Syria, because Syria, after the devastating earthquake, and just a quick, just a briefing, Syria, President Bashar al-Assad is in control majority of the country, except with the northwest provinces bordering Turkey,
where the earthquakes happened.
Yes, the Idlib and some parts of Aleppo, those under the control of terrorist groups in Idlib. And
some, not all of them. They're fighting the terrorists.
And the control, of course. Yeah, I'm talking about just certain groups that
they're still active there. In other words,
right. I'm not talking about ISIS. I'm talking about
ISIS and Daesh. Right.
So, and some under the control of the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is a mixed Kurdish and Syrian tribal Syrian groups, such as Arab and Kurdish, supported by the U.S. and in control of Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa and the borderlands between Iraq and Syria. And they control the oil. They control the agricultural basket of Syria. So Syria is undergoing a huge economic downturn, massive, because of the war and because of its resources under the control of a group supported by the U.S., the oil and the agricultural basket. Now, there's some kind of rapprochement with the Syrian regime. The Saudi foreign minister said, Bashar al-Assad, Syria could go back to the Arab League at some point, but not yet. He just said that today. And the UAE went to see Syria, officials from the UAE, and the Syrian president visited the UAE, met with President Mohammed bin Zayed. The Jordanian foreign minister visited Syria. So there's some movement right there to bring Syria back to the fold, because Bashar al-Assad is not going anywhere. So he largely has won the war, with the help of Syria and the Lebanese.
Tyranny survives, basically.
He survived.
Yeah.
But the Syrian situation, the Syrian people really, really very, very bad. I mean, their economy is very bad. The population is suffering a huge poverty. The Syrian lira, I'm not sure, but it's maybe 5,000-6,000 lira to a dollar, So that's the inflation rate is so high, and the value of the purchasing power of the Syrians very low. So, for example, if I was a Syrian teacher or a doctor, my salary would be in US dollars, maybe $50 or $30. So that the situation is very bad. But and because of Russia entanglement with Ukraine, so the Russians, see Syria as maybe less inclined to support more reconciliation and solve the issue, bringing back the provinces back under Syria control. So, and a lot of Syrians have left Syria. Unfortunately, they are in Germany, in Europe, and in the US. When you take the doctors out, the engineers, the business people out, the country, it will take a generation or two to recover, compensate for this quality of the population to leave the country. Not every Syrian refugee is poor and from the countryside or a farmer, to degrade these people, but I'm saying from an economic point of view. So the Syria is, it's still there. And mind you, Iran is heavily involved in Syria. It has bases. It has, it manufactures weapons of sort.
Which they're supplying to the Russians.
And to Hezbollah. But Israel,
of course.
But Israel, in violation of international law, conducts raids. They hit the Syrian targets with rockets, with missiles, at will. And Syria is a sovereign country. It's a state. It's a member of the UN, even though it's weak. But this does not justify that another country that go a lot rockets on it, especially Syria, is not at war with Israel.
Right.
Imagine if Syria fires a rocket on Israel, So this is that's what Israel is doing there. And it shows how weak the Arab order is and how weak Syria is facing Israel. So Israel can do whatever it wants. And Syrian actually protested the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. He went to a Syrian territory, visited a Syrian base controlled by the Kurdish group in violation. This is a sovereign country, nominally a sovereign country. So that's a sad situation of Syria. And it's a sad situation in Iraq and Egypt. I mean, the Middle East really is in a very bad state.
It's a mess. The Middle East is a mess. I mean, it's really tragic, because here's a tyrant in Syria who survives only because the situation gets so bad and the conflict gets so worse, and that Arab terrorism, ISIS, continues to be a threat in the Middle East and the Arab world. He's able to not look as bad. So it's all relative. He's not as bad as the other people. So he was bad at the top of the heap, but now it's like, this hasn't gone anywhere.
Hundreds of Syrians died. Thousands are.
Him and his father have killed so many Syrians. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
you look back at the history of Syria, they massacred Syrians, and it's just, that is a tragedy. And the U.S. has been helping, but what is, just a real quick question, because we're almost at the end of the show, but Turkey seems to be playing a role in all this, right? Helping, but in a way not helping.
Well, Turkey's biggest problem is in the Syrian border area is the Kurdish insurgency.
Right.
Because there's some Kurdish groups are fighting the Turkish government from areas in Syria and in Iraq, the mountainous area called Kandil Mountains area. So, and this is rebellion groups, because of the weakness of the Syrian state, and the Kurdish region of Iraq, harbors some of their kinfolks, the Kurdish Turks. And so Turkey invaded that part of Syria to establish a buffer zone between its border and the Kurdish groups to push them away. So Turkey is in control of all these things. And now Turkey is considering reestablishing a relationship and meeting with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, because like I said, it's not going anywhere, so might as well talk to him. I think that's what
that is the story of Syria. If tyranny can survive long enough, it will be accepted. Ali, what's your Twitter handle if people want to follow you and all your writing? You do a great job. I love and enjoy your stories. They're well written. You can't say that about a lot of writers, not just Arabs, but a lot of American writers these days. A lot of journalists just don't know how to write a story.
Well, my Twitter is Ali, ALI _reports. Regular spelling, REPORTS.
All right. My guest, Ali Younes, talking about a lot of stuff. Appreciate everybody's calls and all you listening on Facebook. You can go to U.S. Arab Radio on Facebook, and you can watch this video and all our discussions. I'm Ray Hanania. Don't forget to follow me on social media at Ray Hanania on TikTok, where I do a lot of issues and comedy and humor, and also on Facebook at RG Hanania or Ray Hanania Writer. You could look all that stuff up. I'm all over the place, so you can find me if you want to. And I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email and tell me what you think. Maybe it'll impact something I write, which it's a pretty big network of newspapers in the Chicagoland area, in the Middle East, on radio, on social media. A lot of these issues that we talk about get out and are heard by people. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Thanks to Layla Al-Husseini, the media mogul, the only Arab American media mogul, who makes this radio show and program possible. Without her help, the Arab world in America, the Arab community, would have no voice whatsoever. So we owe Layla Al-Husseini. You should be supporting her. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. We'll talk to you later.